Karen tried to harass me, so I messed with her mind. I didn't move to Cedar Ridge to make friends. I moved to forget them. After 22 years in the military, half of them spent in places where shadows had bullets and war was a constant and necessary state of mind for survival, I had lost most of the friends I had made, and I needed to forget. I was over the nightmares and the guilt of survival, and now I wanted peace. Not silence, not emptiness, but peace. A cul-de-sac, some hydrangeas, a porch swing, quiet evenings with nothing more dramatic than a squirrel in the bird feeder. I found that here, or so I thought. Would you please take a quick moment to subscribe to my channel? Such a simple thing as a quick click would mean so much to me. Thanks. What I also found was Karen, HOA president, professional people pleaser in public, but a control freak of near dictatorial intensity in private. She ran Cedar Ridge like a suburban Versailles. The grass could only be cut on Tuesdays. Halloween decorations were only permitted between October 15th and 31st. Garden gnomes? Only if they were tasteful. To her, I was a threat, not because I broke rules, but because I didn't bend to her. I didn't wave at her morning patrols. I didn't attend HOA meetings. I didn't ask for permission before planting a rose bush. I didn't smile when she handed me a typed list of neighborhood expectations that included things like seasonal throw pillows for porch chairs. The first warning came in the form of a yellow slip under my door. Unapproved modifications to exterior lighting, immediate remediation required. Modifications? I'd changed a bulb. Then came a full report with grainy photos attached, claiming I was painting my shutters at night. The photos looked like they were taken through binoculars from a bush. She started calling me non-compliant, like this was a boot camp and she was my drill sergeant. "I know what you're doing," she said one morning when she caught me outside. "You think you're above the rules." "I think you're inventing rules," I replied. She jabbed a red manicured finger at my house. "Renovations must be submitted for board approval, period. I've already filed the complaint." "There are no renovations," I said evenly. She narrowed her eyes. "We'll see about that." I smiled, but it wasn't for her. It was for me. Because in that moment, something long dormant stirred inside me. I'd been in Cedar Ridge for 3 years, long enough to learn that people waved but never connected. I hadn't made a single real friend. I'd never married. Truth was, I didn't fit in. Not because I didn't try, but because after years in combat zones, I'd forgotten how. I didn't laugh easily. I didn't trust small talk. I didn't know how to fake smiles. The peace I thought I wanted had curdled into isolation. Every day was a little quieter than the one before, a little more hollow. But now, Karen had offered me something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not in the moral sense, not heroism, but in the way that some of us are wired to thrive in tension, strategy, anticipation, the thrill of staying 2 moves ahead. I wasn't proud of it, but I understood it. This wouldn't be a brawl. This would be a chess game. She'd made her opening move, and now I had every excuse to respond. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel bored. I felt alive. I decided I wasn't going to fight her. I was going to mess with her. See, I wasn't just a vet. I was a former military intelligence operative, psychological warfare, covert perception control. My job was to make people see things or question whether they had. So I brought the battlefield to suburbia. The changes started subtle. I angled a porch light slightly to the left. I moved a potted plant 6 inches every morning, then back again by nightfall. I bought a garden gnome and began changing its hat every 2 days. Firefighter, wizard, construction worker. I swapped out the American flag for a slightly larger one, then a smaller one, then back. Karen noticed. Of course she did. She stared from across the street, binoculars practically fused to her skull. I'd see her pacing along the street with a legal pad, lips moving as she made bullet points. Then came the timed lighting rig. I installed smart bulbs with randomized shifts in warmth and tone. Some nights the house looked warmer, some cooler. She started taking flash photos at different times, trying to capture inconsistencies. I bought a pair of mirror panels and discreetly affixed them behind the shrubs. At the right angle, the reflection made my windows look taller. She thought I'd raised my roofline. She emailed the board at 3:13 a.m. one morning. "Jack has restructured the eaves without notice. Look at the shadows." The board didn't respond. They'd stopped taking her seriously after the mysterious color-changing driveway email chain. But she didn't stop. She ramped up. She started interrogating neighbors. "Have you noticed his siding? I swear it wasn't taupe last week." Karen stood with her iPad, showing one of her poor, cornered neighbors two nearly identical pictures of my house, her finger tapping furiously at the screen like she'd cracked some national security code. The neighbor nodded absently and escaped the moment he could. Undeterred, Karen returned later that week, this time with a tape measure. I watched her from my home office window, calmly sipping my coffee as she tiptoed across my flower bed and held the tape across my window trim. She was muttering to herself, trying to figure out if the frames were exactly 2 inches wider than before. That's when my motion-activated sprinkler system kicked in, a system I'd rigged to only go off near the windows if someone entered a very specific zone. The jet blasted from both sides like twin arcs of justice. Karen shrieked. Startled, she staggered back, tripped over one of my heavy potted plants, and landed on her rear in a soaking, muddy mess. Her perfectly styled bob was plastered to her face. Her iPad went flying into the azaleas. She scrambled to her feet, sputtering, livid, dripping like a wet cat. 10 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. I met them at the door, dry and polite. "She was trespassing," the officer asked, notebook in hand. "I didn't invite her onto my property." "No," I replied, showing them the security footage of Karen creeping around with her tape measure before the sprinklers activated. The officers exchanged a glance. One tried and failed to hide a smirk. They gave Karen a warning, told her she was lucky I wasn't pressing charges for trespassing and that she'd best leave me alone. She stood there, teeth clenched, mascara streaking down her cheeks, wringing out the hem of her blouse. She stomped off like a soaked rooster. But it didn't stop there. A week later, I noticed her rooting through my garbage cans at 6:30 in the morning. Yes, Karen, the self-declared queen of the HOA, in yoga pants and open-toe sandals, elbow-deep in my trash. She was convinced I was hiding something, probably illegal renovation receipts or packaging. But the real reason she was there was the smell. See, I'd recently coated the bottom of my bins with a particularly nasty scent compound I used in pest deterrent consulting. Totally legal, utterly foul. Harmless, but it smelled like a sewer had opened into a rotting egg salad. The trash cans themselves were spotless, but the odor clung to the inside, and, unfortunately for Karen, to her feet. She must have stepped in a pooled spot because minutes later she was dry heaving into her own hydrangeas. Prosody that day, she stormed into the local precinct, barefoot and furious, demanding an investigation. Said I was poisoning the block. The officers called me, not out of concern, but to let me know they were dismissing her complaint. "She really went through your trash?" one of them asked, chuckling. "Yep. And all she found was a stink bomb?" "Actually, she didn't find anything. I haven't put real trash in there for 2 weeks." I heard full-blown laughter on the other end. Karen didn't take it well. Apparently, the smell had seeped into her skin. She tried vinegar, baking soda, tomato juice, nothing worked. Her husband took the kids to a hotel that night. The next morning, she was seen outside her house, standing on her front steps, screaming into the phone, red-faced, hair a mess, yelling about her husband being a coward and calling me a malicious swamp warlock with a vendetta. She swore like a drunken sailor at a bake sale. At this point, I thought she would stop her harassment. I mean, I was afraid she would stop, and I was having so much fun. What sort of person would persist? But luckily, Karen was the sort. Stubborn, unreasonable, foolish, the perfect mark. I couldn't rebuild the camaraderie of my unit, but I could recreate the mind games we'd once played on warlords and insurgents. It grounded me, and frankly, it really was fun. I'd installed full surveillance, motion detection, audio, night vision. Every inch of my property was recorded, and every inch of her trespassing was documented. And then I prepared the final move. In the Army, we called it an environmental persuasion mechanism. To Karen, it would become the day her reign ended. There was a patch of soil on the side of my yard she always hovered near. It wasn't visible from the street, a small, shaded nook by the fence. I dug it out carefully, shaped it like a trench, and lined the bottom with thick river muck I'd borrowed from a friend who runs a fishing lodge. It stank. I covered it with dry dirt, topped it with a fresh mulch layer, and placed a fake stepping stone just a few inches off center. A lure. Then I waited. It was a Saturday, late morning, clear skies, birds chirping, children playing. I was in my garage when I saw her. Karen, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, creeping along the fence line like a raccoon in a pantsuit. She didn't know the cameras had auto-tracking. I watched from my tablet as she crouched, took photos, then stepped over the barrier. She walked toward the side yard, scanning for evidence, and stepped directly onto the trap. Splorch. The sound was comically loud. She sank with a shriek, not just to her ankles or knees, but mid-thigh in thick, tar-colored sludge that immediately soaked through her pastel pantsuit. Children nearby froze. One screamed. Another pointed and yelled, "She swamp monster!" Karen tried to step out, but the suction held her like quicksand. With every lurch, more goo splashed across her torso. By the time she crawled out, she was head to toe in stink. Her wig had shifted sideways. Her eyes were wild. She stank like the bottom of a drained canal. And the neighborhood? Lost. Older kids howled with laughter. A dad watering his lawn dropped the hose in shock. Someone shouted, "Quick, get the net," and the whole crowd erupted. Karen fled, slipping on the sidewalk, face streaked with sludge, stinking like a dying swamp. And yes, it was all captured in 4K slow motion from 2 angles with ambient sound. 3 days later, the HOA called a special meeting. Karen submitted a formal complaint titled "Targeted Harassment by Jack Simmons." She came in freshly coiffed but visibly shaken. She demanded disciplinary action. What she got was humiliation. I stood, calm and clean in my collared shirt, and plugged in a USB drive. "Before you decide," I said, "I have a few things to show you." First, I played time-stamped footage showing no renovations, just daily routines, untouched siding, and a remarkably stationary porch swing. Then the doctored photos. I showed how Karen had adjusted filters and angles to simulate changes. One had an obviously photoshopped shrub. Next came her trespassing. She'd crossed my property line at least 7 times, day and night, each time more bold and aggressive. Finally, the main event, the mud incident, played in cinematic slow motion, zoomed and replayed from every angle, complete with dramatic background music. Carmina Burana, naturally. The audience owled. One board member snorted soda through his nose. I paused the video just as she slipped and fell face first, then turned to the room. "I've spoken with my lawyer. Trespassing and harassment charges are being filed, but I'm also donating my surveillance system to the HOA to help protect our community from further disruptions." The implication was clear. Karen was being watched now, too. The board voted unanimously to remove her from office. One member quietly mouthed, "Thank you," to me. Karen didn't speak. She stood, straightened her soaked dignity, and left. The kids began calling her "She Swamp Monster" full-time. Someone even made a TikTok remix. Karen's house went up for sale 2 months later. I got a note in my mailbox. "Thank you for restoring sanity." No signature, just a smiley face and a $10 Starbucks card. Someone gave the gnome in my yard a new neighbor, a large swamp equals monster toy. And every so often, when a neighbor asks me what really happened, I just say, "She tried to gaslight me, so I taught her how it feels to doubt your own reality." And oh yeah, I now have a few good friends and quite a few acquaintances as a fallout of this entire saga.